Welcome to today's video. In the beginning of a series of people and occupations unique in their strategies to handle stress, we are going to begin with a bang. We're beginning with a lady who brings a lot to the community. She was a teacher, she's an older person, and also a phenomenal bartender. I would love to introduce you to Kathy Probst. Welcome, Kathy. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
My first question to you, and I've always kind of wondered this, how did you get into politics in the first place? A lot of kids going to school, they want to be firemen, they want to be astronauts. I don't rightfully recall any children in my class saying, I want to be a politician. So being that you were a teacher, you are a bartender, what made you decide to take the leap into politics?
Well, I would have to say it's in my blood. I was born into a political family through no fault of my own, and just the way the cookie crumbled. I've always had a love of service, taking the lead from my family, watching what they've done, and thinking that the way that they handled themselves in their communities was exactly what I wanted to do. So I had originally decided to major in political science with a minor in history when I was in college so I could be a lawyer. And my goal was to be able to help citizens like here in West Dallas that are looking for the resources that don't appear to be there, just trying to help where there was a need. And as I graduated from college, I realized as I did a lot of studying of the law that was not going to be my forte. I fight too hard sometimes, and that's not necessarily the best way to handle yourself if you'd like to keep your sanity as a lawyer. So I had an opportunity to work with kids at the city of Milwaukee back in the summer of '88. I was employed by the federal project called the Summer Youth Employment Project. And as a result of that, found out how much I really did enjoy working with kids, older kids. And went back to school, got my teaching degree, and started teaching here in West Dallas in 1995.
And so from teaching, which is obviously to me one of the most noble professions, molding children next to being a parent is probably the most influential role in a child's life. How did you go from that to going into politics?
With my background, I've spent 12 years teaching civics and American AP, U.S. government politics, and it was actually a really short leap. I was in class one day with my AP kids, a little more advanced, a little brighter. Conversations tend to be a little deeper, and had an opportunity one day to lament to my class. I used to do what were called Probst rants, and it was to start the conversation going in the morning. I'd always go on to a rant about something on the news or something to get the ball started and get the kids talking. Sometimes I would say things completely contrary to where I was so that they'd look at me like, what? And then start a different conversation. It's just a way to get them talking in the morning. And I was lamenting the fact that in West Dallas, we have an elected common council and an elected school board, and those two groups very rarely communicated well with one another. And a lot of times it has to do with the personalities of the people who make up those various groups. But let's say we put personality aside. Why wasn't there a better mechanism to make these two elected groups communicate better, work better together, maybe work smarter? Maybe we could save money in places by joining forces in certain areas instead of double spending that same dollar at the city and the district level. And one of my students, who happens to be the son of one of our city engineers here in West Dallas, sitting in my class, looked at me and said, and I had already turned in my letter of resignation. So I had decided already that I was done being a teacher. Not for any apparent reason, just I had hit that wall and I was smart enough to know when it was time to leave. And so after my letter was in, this student looked at me and he said, well, then why don't you run? And I looked at him and I kind of giggled because I thought he was teasing, and I said, yeah, right. And he said, no, you should really run. Why don't you? And I said, because I don't think West Dallas would ever elect a teacher to the Common Council. I said, I just don't believe that happens. I said, West Dallas is changing politically from a blue to more of a purplish red. And I said, I don't think that regardless of where my political background is and where I stand on the spectrum, just the fact that I was a teacher is going to make the red side of West Dallas believe I'm too liberal, because most people believe all teachers are too liberal. And so that was a big hiccup for me, was to think that there's no way. Do I want to undertake something that I think is going to be a losing proposition? And then I thought, you don't ever do anything by not trying, so you might as well. And I talked to my husband, and I came back to class the next day, and I looked at that kid and I said, I really hate it when you guys listen to me. I really hate when you turn around and use my own words against me, but I said, you're right. When I have something to say, I shouldn't sit here and complain. I should stand up and do something. Exactly what I've been saying to you guys. So I'm going to do it. And when the kids found out that I was really going to run, they volunteered to be my campaign force.
That's
so it was my
amazing.
Students that kind of put on my campaign. They went door to door for me. They were incredible. And every one of those kids showed up on inauguration night to be there when I took the oath of office. So that was just, it was my teacher dream come true. I taught these kids something. They turned around and used what I taught them, and it just was just one of the coolest things that I'd ever gotten.
And obviously a great sign that you reached them and inspired them. I mean,
that was always my hope.
Yeah, there's no more validation than if they all show up and work for you for free. That's to get you elected. They obviously believed in you and what you stood for. So, speaking of being elected, as a lay person, I have a general idea, but could you explain a little bit more what an alderperson does? What is their job obligations, what they bring to the community, what their responsibilities are?
Sure. Well, we have to live within our districts, and West Dallas is divided up into 5 aldermanic districts. There are 2 alderpersons per district, and our primary responsibility is writing, passing, or proposing and passing ordinances that will pertain to the people that live in our community. We also put together the budget. We have to vote on the mayor puts together the recommended budget, and then we have to vote on how much money we can spend in the community. We have to decide where that money is spent best, because we have a very, very finite amount of money here. And with the levy limits imposed by the state, we don't have the ability to keep raising taxes or to have new revenue streams coming in, so we have to think about the best way to spend our dollar. And that really is a big portion of our job. And I think the most citizen-wise, the most important thing I do is my contact with the actual community itself, going out and meeting all of my constituents, being present. I saw you guys yesterday at a la carte. I am a member of the West Dallas Women's Club, so I volunteer. I volunteer at the Women's Club table to work on events like this. But again, it's me as the middleman between the citizenry and City Hall. They don't necessarily know which department to call to solve their problem, so they call me. They get to call one person. I know who to call because I'm the one that's been taught and in service through who does what at City Hall. So I know if you call me about a tree that's down, I know who to call. Rather than having you call the mayor, and that's not at all where you call, but that's a good place to start. But if you call the mayor's going to have to make other phone calls, and the mayor's got a lot of things going on because he takes care of all 60,000 people in our city. My job is just the 12,000 within my district. So if you call me, I'm accessible, and then I know who to call to get your problem taken care of.
So it's kind of more of a liaison between the citizen and the proper department and government then.
In all honesty, people have asked me what I feel my most important job is, and do I miss the classroom? And I do. I miss the kids, but I'm still teaching. I teach every day. I just teach grown-ups now. I teach grown-ups how to solve their own problems.
Well, that brings us to our next question. That seems like there's a lot of responsibilities and a lot of obligations. What stresses do you think is unique to being an alderperson, and how do you go about addressing those and stress that just becomes with, obviously, you have a lot on your plate, not to mention going home and having family life as well. How do you balance all that, and how do you deal with the stresses that are unique to your job?
I think that the biggest stress, there's two different, and they're completely different kinds of stress. The stress that comes from being at City Hall, trying to figure out how we spend money, that's always very difficult, and you know that in order to fund this program, you may have to take money from this program, and that program, those were real people, and that's really tough, and when you realize that the decisions that you make are affecting someone's life, the way that they raise their family at home, the way they do what, that's a whole different kind of stress, and I haven't figured out how to manage that part of the stress yet because I don't have the answers yet. I'm still learning. The other kind of stress, which has been much easier to deal with, and I think that I'm able to pull from my past as a teacher, just dealing with class management and behavioral management, are the people that call me that are very angry, very angry. My goal will always be to take somebody that calls me, whether they start calling me names and whatnot at the beginning of that conversation, my goal by the end of that conversation is to get them talked down off the ledge. You know, they're so angry and so irritated by the time they call me that sometimes their anger is bigger than the problem was because it wasn't taken care of. And if I make them feel listened to and heard, number one, and then I can do something to fix, even if it's this little, I can do something to fix whatever it was that they called me about. I've been able to bring them right back down. I listened, I took them seriously, and I was able to try to help them.
So after having a day where you deal with several angry calls or have to make several tough decisions, I'm sure there must be several days that you go home feeling a little stressed. What do you do personally to address stress and stress reduction?
Well, in the last 4 years, in the 4 years since I've been an alderman, I've worked really hard at my diet, working at eating better foods, because I know that has a lot to do with how you process the stress, is what you've already put in your body. I don't drink at home. If I have any alcoholic beverages, it's to go out, so we don't do that at home. I don't sit around the house drinking. I think that when you start to do that, that could be a very negative thing if you're already very stressed. So we spend a lot of time outside. I garden. I love gardening. I love flowers and plants and landscaping and things like that. So I do a lot of things with my hands outside. It's amazing how much aggression you can get out by digging in the dirt. And it's afterwards I get to see something pretty that I accomplished. So whatever it was that drove me out into the garden that made me upset, by the time I'm done I get to walk away and I feel better because I've worked out the aggression. Plus I have something really pretty to look at. So.
Something beautiful inspired by stress.
Yeah, my backyard is my haven. And honestly, we go away. We have a place up in Minocqua. It's my mom's, but we've helped her take care of it all these years, and we go up there. That is my heaven on earth. So it's just nice to go away and not hear any sounds. And when I do go up there, I turn off the phones. I turn off the phone and I turn off my iPad, and I get to just take a couple days away. And I let people know I'm going to be gone. There's 2 of us. The other alderperson was just gone for like a week and a half in Europe. So while he's gone, I play double duty because I'm getting all the phone calls. So if I take off for a couple days, Marty gets all the calls. It's like we help each other out, and he's an awesome human being. He's a great alderman. He helps we each bring different strengths to the job. So.
Well, that brings us to our last 2 questions, which to me I'm very excited to ask you. The first one, because I know as a motivational speaker and author, as well as being a DJ and a bartender, when I meet someone at a seminar that I know as a bartender, just relating to them in a totally different fashion, I can't imagine how it must be for you to see some of your constituents that you must meet at City Hall and have to deal with them in that particular environment, and then they come and you're having a beer together or you're serving them at the bar. How do you manage to handle both those different roles?
Well, I was a bartender through college. That's how I paid the bills. That's how I put myself through school. And after I left teaching and I was an alderman for the first 3.5 years, my cousin owns the bar that I am bartending at. So my goal wasn't to get back into bartending by any means. He found a need. He was without help. I said, "Do you want me to go get my license back again?" And he's like, "You will?" So I did, so that I could help my family. So I started bartending there. It's actually turned out to be an awful lot of fun. I'm having more fun than I ever thought I would. I only bartend 2 nights a week. And I've had both former students come in, which is a little bizarre when they walk in and they see me behind the bar and they think that is just the best. Oh my God, my teacher's gonna wait on me. To them that's funny. And if they can buy me a shot, they think that's really funny, which is weird. But anyway, I guess maybe when I was 18, I used to think that might have been cool. But I haven't had any issues at work because I do a really good job, and I make sure people understand this. When I'm bartending, I'm not an alderman. I'm just your neighborhood bartender.
So if someone were to come and talk to you,
I give them my card and I ask them to call me in the morning. Because when I'm working, and I'm working for Sean Lang at that point, that's his business, and he hired me to be a bartender, whether I'm his cousin or not. He hired me to serve his customers and to increase his customer base. If I'm having a conversation that could be very political or very divisive with a customer at the bar and someone else is sitting next to him, it could become something that it's not bar conversation. They say you don't talk politics and religion and things like that, and when there's alcohol involved. So when I'm there, I'm a bartender. I'm your neighborhood fun bartender, and we'll have a good time and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. But if it's about a city issue, unless it's done in like a non-specific city issue, but just in general, maybe we're talking about crime, or maybe we're talking about the heroin epidemic, we can talk about that. That's a conversation. But don't specifically ask me at that moment, what are the programs, what are we doing, how much money are we spending? That's a conversation for a different time. Call me in the morning and I'll answer every one of your questions, because when I'm bartending, I don't have my notebook with me. I don't have my facts that I have to go back and check, because I would never want to misspeak. I don't want to tell somebody inappropriate information or incomplete information. So I have I don't take that stuff with me to work. You know?
And I think that's important, because I think there are lots of people who have two different roles in life, and be it two different occupations or two different social roles whatsoever. And I think it's important to realize, and also if you are on the opposite side of that, to respect somebody and their different roles, to approach it. Well, that brings us to our last question. Well, second to last question, but and this is one I've always kind of wondered from a political side of things. Being that you are a person who really cares a lot about people, and we kind of had this little bit of a discussion before the camera was on. What do you do when you're faced with an issue that you can see both pros and cons of both sides, but yet you have to make that decision to go with one side or another? How do you make that decision?
That's probably that is probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do, because you're literally weighing people against one another, and it's really hard. I don't value certain people over others. People are valuable. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do for a living. Everybody contributes something. Sometimes I have to work harder to find out what that is, but everybody contributes something. My goal is to always find out what that is. So when I'm faced with the problem, my goal will be to have always done the research ahead of time to find out as much information about each side as I can. And then I look at the people I represent, because in all honesty, there's 4 different ways that you can legislate. You can do it very politically and be very party oriented, and I'm not. You could do it by being a delegate of the people, which I believe I am. I do believe that I'm a trustee of the people. I believe that they trust my judgment, otherwise I wouldn't have been elected. And then there's the way to balance all 3 of those together, and that's what I try to do every time. I try to be the trusted representative. I try to represent the people I represent and what is it that they want. And the one that I try the least is the party affiliation, because it doesn't matter to me whether it's a conservative or a liberal idea. Is the idea a good idea? And then I balance it against what we have financially, and are we able to do that? There's got to be, for lack of a better descriptive term, it's a triage. When you're in a city like this, you got to do the things that will have the biggest bang for the buck first, and so I have to look at the value of everything we're doing as well. It's always very hard to take people and equate it down to money. That's not how I operate. Like I said, everybody's got value, so that's the hardest part for me. On a couple occasions, I have voted my conscience for the people I represent, and voted one way. My partner Marty has voted his conscience and voted for the people that he believes he represents, and we have actually counteracted one another. And at one point, he turned around and looked at me and he said, "You just canceled out my vote." And I looked at him and I said, "Or we just represented everybody in the 2nd district." And he looked at me and he said, "Touche." It's about how you look at it. It's a perspective difference. So when I have to, when it comes to those really tough decisions, I think you just have to stop and you have to put yourself in the shoes of the people you will be affecting. And which effect is the most manageable? And that is always hard, and I will always make someone mad. And I had to, a long time ago, I had to learn that that's okay. You can be mad at me. I can't help that. That's you. You're welcome to be mad at me. I can explain to you why I did what I did, but ultimately, the way you feel about it, that's on you.
And I give you credit. That's definitely nobody likes people to be mad at them. It's a tricky fine line to walk.
It was a lot harder when I was a teacher, when the kids were mad at me. That was tougher for me than it is now. I've had other grown-ups be mad at me before. It's like I can handle that. It's just tougher when it's a kid.
So here's one question. that I didn't throw. I'm throwing you a little curveball because I didn't let you know ahead of time. But this is a fun question.
Okay.
We are sitting here in Urban Joe's, a great coffee shop in West Dallas. If you get a chance to check it out, highly recommend you do. As an alderman of this district and a representative of the city in general, what is the single thing that you are most excited about this coming year for either your district or the city of West Dallas in general?
All the new development we have going on. That's the easiest question you've asked. I have never been as excited about West Dallas as I am right now. Well, not since I was a kid. I mean, when West Dallas was Western Days and the State Fair and the things that were what West Dallas was in the 1970s. But now, since I've been elected, we have a $68 million development going on about 4 blocks to the east of here. I am beyond excited about this. We have a brand new development happening just to the west of the brand new hotel we just built. That's all happening in my district. That development will be happening in the first district. But it's so close, 2 blocks out of mine. The benefit that we're going to have on this side of town to the property values from all this new development going in, people that have been waiting a really long time for some type of relief are finally going to feel it. And at the part of the city that needs it the most.
I'm a very big State Fair fan. In fact, that's part of my big stress reduction. You can ask her. Best 11 days of summer, in my opinion, no doubt. But I'm also excited. I heard there's a new brewery, first brewery opening up in West Dallas.
That's in my district.
A lot of excitement there. A lot of new things coming. So I thank you for answering the question. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you guys for watching this video. As a fabulous parting gift, I'm giving you a copy of my book, A Happy Life for Busy People.
Thank you.
A lot of stress reduction tips in there. Should be fun. So
I'm going to learn something.
Well, at least you'll learn what I know. Again, thank you guys for joining. I hope the conversation with Kathy has helped. By the time that you listen to this, take her tips, take my tips. The light at the end of the tunnel may be you.